Edith is forced to play the role of the Marquis's bride in order to save his wealth from another insidious girl, but that girl tries in every way to discredit Edith, giving her an aphrodisiac or making up other stories. I tried very hard for you to make this video. Subscribe to the channel and like right now for my efforts. Voices could be heard somewhere in the spacious room, and these strangers tried to speak quietly so as not to attract too much attention. One of the strangers said, "I'll try to get it over with as soon as possible and try to touch less. But if anything, there's nothing you can do about it, so please excuse me." The man's voice was upset. Obviously, he had hurt someone, and now he was apologizing, trying to make amends. The girl felt a sharp pain in her leg, as if she had been injured, and took a deep breath. She tried to cover her mouth with her hands to avoid being too loud. However, instead of screaming, tears appeared in her eyes, and she began to reproach herself for what had happened, as there was nothing special about that day, or so she thought. The whole story started a month ago in a big brown house. The sunlight entered the spacious room, and it was so bright that the desire to close the curtains was simply tormenting. There were a lot of books and blank sheets on the table. It looked like some genius was developing a new drug or an invention of mankind. However, the man sitting at the table was not an old man at all, but a fragile girl. A girl with brown eyes and braided hair. She was holding a green pen and writing something on a piece of paper in front of her. Someone knocked on her door, so she said, "Yes, come in." The door slowly opened, and a man stood on the threshold. This man was called Butler Sover. He was the butler of Marquis Rodion. This man came for a reason. He said, "I wanted to talk to you about Lady Argyle's insulation materials." The girl raised her pen and made a gesture of gratitude that he had reminded her of this. This girl's name was Edith Argyle. She was a great financier of the Marquis Rodion. Butler Sover said, "I heard from the top that there are likely to be complications, so the trading volumes will be much lower than last year." Argyle raised her head in surprise. She was quite responsible and always controlled the deliveries, but everything went wrong. The girl had already made the first installment of the installment plan, so she could not believe that the money could disappear. The man replied, "It looks like something went wrong with them. They are even willing to pay a fine of 30% of the amount, as if that will solve the situation." Sovet came closer and stood next to the girl, trying to come up with a solution to the situation, or at least push the girl to do so. He said, "They dared to set you up like that because you are a very important person. It seems that the volume of materials has decreased a little, as if someone took some for themselves, for the sake of easy money. I think you will not give up without a fight, Lady Argyle." The girl just laughed. Argyle continued to think about how to get the materials, because they couldn't just lose some of them. The court counsel said, "Maybe if we promise to reduce their fine, they will help us find a new supplier who will order the missing goods. It will make your job a lot easier. I can contact them." The girl suddenly thought. She thanked the guy for helping her make her work easier, and then seemed to freeze, leaving her gaze on one point. The court counsel called out to her, trying to understand what had happened. He politely asked her what she was thinking about, because it was clear from her that she was confused about something. Argyle replied, "It's nothing special. I just want to know how it happened that I was entrusted with such a responsible job." The butler did not understand what Edith meant, so he asked again. Argyle said, "Well, I make the Marquis's life easier with my work, right? But I'm just his lordship's financier. It seems like a lot for me to handle." The butler still didn't understand what Edith was getting at. Maybe someone had been mean to her, or she didn't want to work here anymore. Argyle felt as if she was playing the role of a wife and homeowner, which was uncomfortable to say the least. The Marquis was away at the moment, so she didn't know whether she had the right to take on this kind of responsibility at all, or whether it would be better to appoint someone else who would do a better job. The man turned his head to look at Edith in surprise, and then an unfamiliar voice said, "You know, in spite of this, I think I'm very lucky to have you." The girl looked up and saw him. She opened her mouth in surprise, but immediately straightened her back. A man came into the room and said, "Your lordship, you don't seem to be very busy as far as I can see." It was Alfios Rodion, the owner of the Silver Hollow estate. He came closer and said, "If you have nothing else to talk about." Argyle straightened her hair and smilingly said that they had already finished. They had a strange, friendly atmosphere between them, where the Marquis was a rather intense boss and Edith was a joyful girlfriend. The court counsel said, "Your Excellency, I have a lot to do, so..." The Marquis quickly told him to leave the office, and the butler also ran out of the room with a smile, before meeting Argyle's eyes. Edith got up from her desk and invited the man to sit down. However, he said that he had come here for a short time. Argyle stood up and waited to see what the Marquis would say. She tilted her head and said, "In that case, I've been listening to you carefully." She didn't have time to finish. Before she could even blink, a huge body appeared in front of her, its shape blocking out any sun, very close to her. Marquis came so close that the girl began to panic. She felt her hands start to sweat because she hadn't expected the distance to be so short in a moment. The Marquis asked, "Edith Argyle, you're not married, are you? And you're not planning to look for a groom either?" It was an unexpected question, to be honest. She didn't expect to be forced to think about it. However, the phrase, "looking for a husband," sounded as if she was purposefully walking around the estate looking for someone to match her. There was not much of a choice. Colleagues at work? Definitely not. They grew up together, so they were all like siblings, little aristocrats? Also, not an option. The Marquis is the only potential candidate, but not in this case. With that search, she didn't care about love. The Marquis thought about it, but then smiled. The girl squeezed the edge of her dress so hard that she left nail creases on it. The man was getting closer and closer. It was too abrupt a reduction in distance, and Edith considered pushing the man away from her. But then I suddenly heard, "Okay, then you could pretend to be my daughter-in-law." The girl was speechless. She forgot how to speak for a few seconds. All the synonyms for the word awkwardness perfectly described the situation that took place between them. The atmosphere of tension increased even more. Argyle said, "Who? Pretend to be who?" She broke into a loud voice, as if she was going to scream. The Marquis came even closer to her, their noses almost touching. The distance between them as if it could not be reduced any further, but the man was breaking down this transparent barrier. The man repeated once more, "Edith Argyle, would you like to play the part of the owner of the Silver Hollow House and daughter-in-law of the Marquis Rodion?" His gaze mesmerized the girl. She couldn't move, but continued to stare at him in shock. When he made the girl lean on the edge of his desk, she seemed to wake up. And then I mentally began to curse this day, because I couldn't think of a more awkward situation than this. Oh my God, her and the fake bride of Marquis Rodion, it even sounded funny to her. A stranger came to the estate and said, "Where can I find the Marquis? Our separation from him lasted 12 years, so I would very much like to meet him." Lady Argyle was standing at the entrance, smiling awkwardly. Mentally, she said, "My face is going to crack from this smile, and it's hard to breathe in this dress. I'm in shock at this absurdity." If you ask why she agreed to this circus, the answer is quite simple. The Marquis offered her a tenfold increase in salary, so it was too tempting to refuse. If it wasn't for the money, she would never have agreed to this scam in her life. But the woman in front of her, she was quite beautiful. Who was she? Viola Galloway, the Duke's only daughter. Their family has been flourishing for 3 generations, and the young lady is the epitome of beauty. Yet, she has come here to ask for marriage. The Marquis was sitting in his study and was scolding Galloway about this. He said, "They're really crazy. They broke off the wedding themselves, boasted about their lineage, and now they've decided to marry their daughter off again. They just changed their minds after hearing rumors about my family's lineage with the Dowager Queen. It's the height of impudence." He spoke so emotionally that Edith tried to keep the conversation going, but did not dare to say anything. When there was an awkward silence between them, Argyle decided to say something. Sitting in her chair, she said, "Your Lordship, this may sound rude, but you cannot simply marry her and take over the whole of Galloway." The Marquis said, "Say that again." Edith laughed and raised her hands in the air, gesturing, "I surrender." When Edith invited Viola to the hall, she tried not to fall every time she looked up the stairs, because she was trying to be a great actress. The butler gestured, "Begin," and Edith became even more nervous. However, for the sake of her salary and high bonuses, she took a breath, gathered herself, and said, "The Marquis has gone to inspect his property." Viola looked at the butler in surprise, and then back at the girl sitting in front of her, asking again. Viola was assured that the Marquis would not return for a few days due to a tour of the property. She was silent for a while, because she came here to see her future fiancé. Viola said, "Last week, a letter was sent on my behalf about my imminent visit. Maybe there was some mistake with the date?" Edith said they received the letter, and Viola had even more questions. Edith said, "We received your letter. It was fine. I was personally present when it was opened." Viola opened her eyes in surprise. Why? Because such confidential letters sent by one ruler to another are not allowed to be read by servants or subjects, only by rulers. In other words, Viola still didn't know who the woman sitting in front of her was, so she asked, "I'm sorry, but you haven't introduced yourself yet." Waiting for an answer, Edith simply introduced herself, and Viola suddenly realized what kind of family this woman was from. Edith Argyle was a member of the Vissel family of Rodion, a family of the Viscount. The girl replied, "Yes, my brother, Viscount Argyle, I am." No matter how much she practiced, it was difficult to name herself in front of such a woman, and she gathered all her strength into a fist. And of course, it was quite difficult, because Edith Argyle was too simple a girl for the Marquis. However, she could not keep running away from the answer. She had to say it. Edith said, "I'm a little embarrassed to introduce myself, but I am engaged to his lordship." Viola didn't say anything. She felt a lump in the middle of her throat, but it didn't let her say anything. Taking the cup of drink in her hand, she finally said, "I beg your pardon, Lady Argyle, but I have not heard any news of the Marquis's engagement." Her look was as if she was jealous of the Marquis's fake fiancé. And of course, Viola couldn't have known about this engagement, because it happened just the day before yesterday. And just in words, everything looked so absurd that even her salary couldn't cover her nerves. Edith said, "Lady Galloway, you know very well that the situation in the capital is not good. So as soon as his lordship has done everything he needs to do, we will be officially engaged when the opportunity arises." Cousin of the Marquis Rodion and daughter of Queen Griselda, Princess Regina. After she defeated her younger half-sister Tricia, Regina became unofficially considered the heir to the throne. But the coronation will not take place soon, so we need to make sure that everything goes smoothly and calmly. Regina decided to leave Tricia's rights to the throne entirely and become his sole successor. But the Galloway family supported the candidacy of the younger sister, so they are not in the best position now. Great job, Edith. Now you just need to follow the boss's plan. This imaginary plan had several points: to humiliate Viola, lower her self-esteem, and make her leave. The girl said, "Are you interested in anything else? You can ask, don't hesitate." Viola said she would like to rest, because she had no more questions. Edith returned to the council of the court and asked to be escorted to Lady Galloway's chambers. 4 days have passed since the incident. Viola stayed at the Marquis's house for several days, and those days were just torment. Viola would say, "Put my personal linen on. I have too sensitive skin to sleep on ordinary sheets. For a daughter-in-law of the Marquis, you are very frugal, Lady Argyle. I am so grateful for your care despite your financial difficulties." These little things were driving all the staff crazy. In any case, the Marquis is quite a character. He organized a meeting immediately upon arrival, without even greeting Lady Galloway. And this impudent woman sat patiently waiting for him, because his lordship said that he had business with the feudal lord. It seems that even such high-ranking aristocrats would not want to lose their reputation by interrupting an important meeting. The Marquis said, "Tell me everything that happened here, not including the uninvited guest. If you have nothing to tell, then invent something, preferably more than one thing. By the way, if this strange girl looks down on everyone like that, how dare she even talk about the estate's well-being?" Suddenly, the Marquis said, "Now the finances," and Edith didn't even react. Argyle was working as it should, and flawlessly, and the finances were in order. The girl was stuck in thought. She didn't answer when she was called, but suddenly she heard her name and jumped up. She said, "Please forgive me. I have no energy to think about anything but the Duke's daughter. As everyone knows, I am currently involved in a scam." It could not be called a scam, so Edith shouted, "Don't pick on my words!" In any case, she couldn't think of anything else. The Marquis was surprised and asked, "What did Lady Galloway do to you?" And here Argyle would like to tell everything, but it would not even take a whole day to write this memoir. However, as a hardworking and the best financier in the world, she asked for only one thing: to evict Lady Galloway from the estate as soon as possible. The head of the Knights Darth said, "Lady Argyle, did she hit you?" Everyone at the table began to discuss, including the servant Brigand and the chief of staff Uther. They all came to the same conclusion. No matter how terrible Lady Galloway was, if they started this business, they had to finish it. Edith wanted to hit them all, and it was easy to think so when they watched this self-absorbed lady shouting the name of the servants to do something. The Marquis said, "Didn't you agree to take my job? Besides, you'll have the promised paychecks." Based on all of Edith's observations, the Marquis was stubborn, but he was also logical and fair, so if she could clearly justify her request, the Marquis might listen to her. Edith said, "Your lordship, unfortunately my skills are not enough for this kind of work. Please break off our engagement." It always worked without fail, and if she did it sincerely, then the guarantee was 100%. However, she heard denied. There was an awkward silence around the table. The girl's face continued to glow with a stupid smile, and then she realized that for the first time in her years of impeccable work, she was denied the opportunity to evict some stupid lady from this house. The Marquis repeated once more, "Refused." Edith began to curse the day she agreed to this adventure. She wanted to know the reason for the refusal, but the Marquis didn't explain anything. just said, "N, that means no." And then he asked everyone in the room to listen to what he was going to say next. The Marquis rose, and then he said, "Galloway's daughter must know that Edith is my fiancée. So be careful and watch your words carefully. Let's go." He ended the meeting abruptly, making it clear to everyone that there would be no more discussions this time. Everyone went out the door, and Edith stayed in the room. She stared in shock at the door, behind which the Marquis' silhouette disappeared. It looks like she hit the nail on the head. Very soon, evening came, followed by deep night. The Marquis organized a meeting in the banquet hall along with Lady Galloway. She said, "It's been a long time since we last met. I'm Viola Galloway." The man turned his gaze to the woman sitting in front of him. The Marquis said, "Alfios Rodion, I did not think I would ever see you again, let alone under such circumstances." Viola's voice seemed unbearable to Edith, and she was just waiting for the moment to pack her things and throw her out the door of this mansion. Galloway said, "Lady Argyle has been very kind and hospitable to me during your absence. I think it has tired her very much. She is now the owner of the estate. I am a little ashamed, dear. I talk so much. It affects me to visit the capital so rarely." The Marquis said that even if Father Galloway insisted on this, no one had the right to refuse him, even now in such difficult times. The atmosphere was just wonderful. Of course I was being sarcastic. But Lady Galloway, who came all the way from so far away, is certainly more famous than her father. Galloway tried to ask what the Marquis meant, but I heard back, "You know exactly what I'm talking about? Or should I say it out loud?" Looking at the girl, it seemed as if she was going to crush everyone here. In the most indifferent tone, she said, "Your lordship, are you finished?" The Marquis certainly had something to say, but he emphasized that the girl was in no condition to think on her feet, which angered Viola. The man said, "You know, I haven't said everything, but let's stop and reschedule our meeting, because you are not able to think straight now, so I will probably keep to myself what I would like to tell your father." Viola clutched the fabric of her dress. It was so noticeable that Edith and the Marquis thought she was going to start yelling at them. But she got up and said, "I think we've had enough talk for today. I'm going to go." The Marquis looked at the girl in surprise and asked where she would go, since he had not assigned her a bed. But he remembered that his financier, Edith, now owned the house as well, so he simply let the girl go. Sitting in her chair away from the Marquis and Galloway, Edith watched the situation unfold, and surprisingly, it went quite smoothly. However, something did catch her eye and alerted her. Viola got up quite easily, let go of her dress, and walked away. But her look, it looked so cunning and evil, as if Galloway had planned something so terrible that it had no chance of failing. Edith and the Marquis returned to their respective bedrooms and met again the next day. The Marquis said, "Are you going to go to the tea ceremony instead of me?" Why the sudden urge? His question looked like he didn't trust Edith, so she decided to explain herself. She proudly declared, "Someone, of course I won't say who, didn't want to terminate the contract, so I have to work according to the salary." Seeing such a sly face, even a fool would have a bad feeling, and the tea ceremony is the perfect opportunity to realize something like that. The Marquis decided not to get involved, so he left it all up to Edith. The man said, "Do as you like, but don't get too deep into it." I wish she had listened to his words then. At the tea ceremony, Viola asked, "So you're saying that his lordship, he couldn't make it?" Edith nodded her head, confirming Galloway's words. A waitress approached the girl and gave her a pill. Argyle wondered why Viola needed it. Their gazes crossed in disbelief, but they didn't seem to think anything was wrong. She watched Edith drink her tea with a suspicious eye. Suddenly she felt a little dizzy. If she had only known that this could happen, she would never have gone to this ceremony in her life. When she woke up, she saw that it was suspiciously light outside. Feeling a strange tingling in her head, Edith did not realize what was happening. She was sitting at the table alone, not understanding why she was here, who she was. Her head was as if it were empty, completely empty. Trying to regain consciousness, she looked around and saw neither Galloway nor the maid. A strange heat went through my body. She tried to take off the top of her dress and open her shoulders. It was unbearably hot, as if the temperature around her was... She began to search her pockets for something, but they were empty. The girl screamed, "This can't be happening!" My head was pounding unbearably, and I wanted to drink something or go back to sleep to avoid this clenching pain in my temples. Suddenly, she heard, "Edith, what's going on here?" An all too familiar voice echoed in her head. She looked up and saw the Marquis through blurry eyes. The last thing she saw before she passed out was his worried face. When the man heard Edith's name being shouted even louder, she eventually woke up. The Marquis said, "Edith, it's me. Are you awake? Many people saw you on the way to my room. Why did the Marquis come to this room? It's quite simple. More than 2 hours had passed since their meeting, so he decided to check if everything was okay. The man asked what was wrong, and Edith just answered, "Galloway, a pill, tea." She couldn't speak clearly and understandably, but she conveyed the main point she noticed. Argyle realized too late that this tea was definitely not just water with herbs, but with impurities that made her feel so terrible. The Marquis sat on the floor for about an hour, waiting for Argyle to feel better. At first he thought it was just a simple sleeping pill, but it seems that his effect was too strong. Edith complained of fever. She was burning. Her body was just burning as if he was a flame inside. She thought she was going to die. It was at that moment that the Marquis realized what was happening. He put his hand to his head and said, "It looks like it's going to be a long time. There is one way to ease your thirst, but..." He suddenly fell silent, realizing what he would have to do for Edith's sake. He had to help her. She was his assistant, and she took such risks for him, so he had to at least alleviate her suffering. Edith was shaking, and she felt a continuous heat in her body, as if she were burning in a flame or boiling in boiling water. The Marquis looked at the girl quite sympathetically, feeling responsible for what had happened to her. Looking at this poor girl, the Marquis set to work again, but nothing helped. He tried to think of something that could more effectively alleviate her condition. Looking at his hand, he sighed softly, realizing that his efforts were in vain and that he needed to think of something else. He lifted his head proudly and decided to act. His moral state does not allow him to get over it so easily, but again, the responsibility for how Edith feels now was higher than his moral principles. Putting on disposable gloves, he said, "I'll help you, Edith. Just please be patient a little longer." When the girl felt the heat in her body rising, her head completely shut down. The pain shot through my fingertips. A slight cramp gripped her body, after which she felt better. She tried to grab hold of something and squeeze it tightly, as if it would help ease the pain inside her. Looking at the Marquis, she completely relaxed, and then she said, "I can't think at all." She looked like a little child who was fascinated by the colorful patterns on the walls and ceiling. The Marquis thought, once was not enough. How much of this drug did she take? Edith continued to lie on the bed, not realizing what was happening. She and the Marquis exchanged glances, and Edith exhaled a heavy breath. Holding out her hand, she said quietly, "Not enough." Edith was pulling herself closer and closer to the Marquis, without realizing why. It would have been better for him to keep silent and say nothing. All words were superfluous. However, what Edith said really struck him. He did not know what kind of substance was in his blood, but he knew for sure that it was affecting the girl very badly. He took off his glove with his teeth and threw it to the side. Continuing to fly somewhere in the sky, Edith again felt a sharp pain, familiar second cramps and tingling in her limbs. She did not notice how quickly it was over. Lying on the bed, her body was exhausted to the point of being unbearable. The Marquis quietly said, "Thank God, she seems to be better," his heavy exhalations symbolizing the end of his suffering and that of the girl. He raised his right hand and put 2 fingers forward, attracting the girl's attention. He was silent for a while, and then exhaled heavily again. Turning his head back to the chair, he said, "If you need clothes, you can take my jacket." He nodded toward the chair where the Marquis's dark jacket remained. The man quickly left the room, and Edith was left alone in the room. She abruptly realized what the Marquis was doing after she woke up from a light trance of the substance. Her shame had no end. Praying that it was all a dream, trying to hide her fear, she crossed her arms over her chest and began to whisper, "Why did I even go there, stupid Edith? I should have sat still and kept quiet. But no, I decided to go to that stupid meeting. I'm going to go crazy." The next day, it was as sunny outside as it had been yesterday. Edith dressed and left the room to face her shame. She went to the maid and asked where Galloway was, but she said, "Lady Galloway is not here. I came to help her wash, but there was no one here." She left without saying a word? After everything that had happened? Oh no, this case smelled like a very strange coincidence. A little puzzle in my head came together, and Edith said, "That's right. Yesterday, Marquis Rodion was supposed to go to the tea ceremony instead of me, but I went to the meeting instead. I'm afraid she set it up so that the Marquis would drink the tea, but she was still spiked with this potion. How could a lady who runs the capital stoop so low?" Edith remembered that Viola was also supposed to be in the room sometime in the evening, so she could have left in the morning. Argyle asked, "Last night, did you notice anything strange? Did you overhear anything?" Edith tried to get any testimony. The maid said, "Well, I'm not sure, but yesterday, Lady Galloway refused my services, so I couldn't get into the room. I heard her talking to the maid. She was asking if the Marquis had returned yet, so I stood somewhere near the door to hear what they were saying. This time, this little trick helped Edith a lot. According to the maid, Viola said, "The damn butler, of course. Made me go. What? How? Then Argyle is really a daughter-in-law? Now the Duke is a marquis, even I." All the words flew like torn pieces of a whole picture. Edith realized that Lady Galloway was also discussing her, and it was upsetting. These are just bits of information. But even so, we can understand that Viola pursued two goals. First, to take the aphrodisiac with the Marquis to prevent the irreparable from happening, and second, to find out whether Lady Argyle was really his lordship's daughter-in-law. Galloway was a terrible woman. Her plan was quite cruel. Suddenly the maid said, "Lady Argyle, I wanted to ask you about yesterday." Edith came back angrily. She didn't know what had happened yesterday. She didn't know what she had done, but she knew it was something terrible and shameful. "It looks like she's in trouble. You can really go crazy like that." She was lying on the bed and looking at the ceiling. His hair was scattered across the bed, trying to settle on the pillows on its own. Suddenly the servants came in and wanted to clean the room. They smiled strangely as they listened to Edith's reflections. Why, how? Seeing these strange looks, she realized that these people also knew something. But she couldn't even justify herself to anyone. How would she look these people in the eye? And the Marquis? It was just driving her crazy. Because of those damned nerves, Edith decided that she didn't want to stay in this mansion anymore, didn't want to play that stupid role of a bride. Even if the salary was 10 times higher, it didn't stop her. She threw her things. One by one, she put the photo albums into a leather suitcase that was already barely closed from the untidy things she had stacked. Suddenly she stopped. She looked again at the room she was in, replayed the best moments in her head, but it was all in vain. Edith said, "I don't care about anything, absolutely nothing. The only thing I care about is how did they find out about it?" She couldn't trust anyone anymore, so she packed her bags and went to the estate of Viscount Argyle. At the entrance, she was met by her husband, Theron. He was wearing a shirt over a bathrobe. I think this man has no idea about such a word as fashion. When he saw Edith standing on the doorstep, he seemed to come out of a trance. His eyes rounded, and he stood there in surprise. Edith said, "You became the chairman, and now you sleep hours a day?" In fact, this boy looked very tired, even though he was surprised by his sister's unexpected arrival. It's been 2 days now, and Edith has been working without a boss for 6 years, so a weekend off won't hurt. But it's a little rude to show up unannounced. It was so strange. She didn't know how to go back to the Marquis afterwards. Or no, the question was whether she would ever go back to him. It was so scary and lonely. It was all incredibly exhausting. Edith told the story while sitting in the room of one of her younger daughters. She escaped from reality, the effect of which was like that of strong alcohol. It relaxes you, but then it was too hard to get used to work again. The little girl asked, "So it turns out that the princess now lives in the prince's castle? What will happen to her country?" This wonderful girl with blue-green eyes was incredible. Her name was Sophia Argyle, the daughter of the Argyle family. Edith stood up and answered, "The princess has a younger brother. He will soon be king. Or rather, she could have been queen herself. But now she is married, so... Well, it's not really because of the marriage." Little Sophia made a strange face, waiting for an answer. She asked, "Then why didn't she become one? A princess can do it. We also have a queen. She can do it too." Edith looked at little Sophia in surprise, then turned her gaze to the book, and then agreed that it was a bit strange. Suddenly, Edith said, "Would you like to hear another story about Her Majesty?" The little girl was immediately excited. Her eyes sparkled as she listened to the exciting stories about the king and queen. Little Sophia began to ask about the queen and said, "The Marquis is very handsome, and the queen too. It would be very cool if she had silver hair too. They would look so much alike. I saw a picture of a crown in a book." Word by word, Sophia fell asleep, tired of talking about the crown and knights, different coronations, swords, and defenders, so she just fell exhausted on the bed and fell asleep. Argyle left the room with a sigh of relief and exhaled. She was terribly tired. Even though there was less work than usual, she felt that it was terribly difficult for her to stand on her feet, so she headed for her room. Now she could use a warm bed right under her feet and a machine that could change her clothes in a few seconds. Edith thought about the fact that the estate had very few workers, and in her mind, she had already apologized for that. She was also worried about what Marx would say. He would definitely bring up the subject of Galloway, but how would she explain to him that this woman had tried to get him drunk? Would he be angry? Would he not believe her? Or maybe he would laugh in her face. These thoughts were in her head, and she couldn't get them out of her mind, which made her suffer even more. At some point, she went into the room and closed the door, and at that moment she felt incredibly relieved. Her homeroom where she grew up looked completely different, but it retained that atmosphere. What should Edith have done? Only God knew the answer to this question. However, her thoughts of calmness left her when the door behind her vibrated with intense knocking. She heard a familiar voice ask, "Edith, are you there?" Argyle hesitantly replied that she was. It was Rosa Argyle, the wife of Viscount Argyle. She said quietly, "I'm sorry to be so late. I wanted to talk to you. Do you mind if I come in for a while?" Edith replied in the affirmative and stepped back from the door, allowing Rosa to enter. Well, this woman was not one of those who liked to gossip. She was very smart, so she knew exactly what was going on. Edith invited Rosa to sit down and pulled out a chair for her. When they sat down together, Rosa exhaled, looking directly at Edith. The girl said, "I think you understand why I came. It's not in your character to go on such spontaneous trips." Edith bowed her head, agreeing with Rosa's conclusions. As she watched and listened to this adult woman, Edith kept recalling her brother's words, and he spoke word for word. She was so immersed in her work as a financier that she not only didn't come, but didn't respond to letters, and now she just showed up unannounced, so it's not surprising that they thought it was quite strange behavior. Rosa said quietly, "Edith, I think you need to share your experiences with someone. Please tell me about them. What happened?" The girl looks in shock at Rosa, who offered to be a shoulder to cry on. It feels as if Rosa was pressing on the very points that hurt the most, which were so painful that this pain simply consumed Edith from the inside. Argyle exhaled heavily, and she twiddled her thumbs, trying to take her mind off the terrible negotiations. Rosa saw that Edith turned her head and tried to avoid looking at her, but she understood that there were personal reasons for this. Edith began quietly, "Yes, that's right. To tell you the truth, the day before I came here, everything came crashing down." When the girl began to talk about her experiences, she felt as if she really felt better. She was not interrupted, scolded, or shouted at, but only listened attentively and said apt words of support, which was more than enough to make her happy. Rosa continued to listen to Edith. She realized that the girl was exhausted. However, when Argyle finished, Rosa began, "Edith, you shouldn't have run away from the Marquis. I don't blame you for your actions in any way, because what you did was not unreasonable." Edith listened attentively to this woman. For some reason, she had a feeling in her heart that she would tell her something really useful. Rosa continued, "And it's good that you came to us and not to another place, but to solve the problem, you should have at least talked to his lordship." These words echoed in Edith's head. She lowered her head shyly and tried to end the conversation. Rose continued, "I know that as a vassal of the Silver Grove, you are proud of your position and loyal to your master, so you must be scared, because after everything that has happened, it will be difficult to return the relationship to the previous stage." It feels as if Rosa was hinting that everyone should forget everything, but now it will be impossible. It's one thing to communicate between a boss and his subject. Edith wondered, is it because he is Alfios Rodion? And what I once felt for this man has remained in the depths of my heart. All this time, I have only been happy to play the role of a faithful servant in his house, but it cannot go on like this. Is the Marquis's financier, Edith Argyle, going to go unnoticed? The girl came back and said, "Keep it a secret from my brother." Rosa wanted to say something, but Edith didn't let her. She was sure the girl would keep the secret, but she didn't want to think about it anymore. She just opened her mouth to say something. As Edith said, "That's enough for today." The next day, the street was illuminated by the bright sun. Little Sophia and Terror stood at the entrance to the estate, near a large black carriage. Suddenly he turned his head and saw something. His pupils dilated as he realized what he had seen. Terror shouted, "There's a ghost! It looks just like my sister! Is it really my sister?" Edith seemed so confused, as if she were a 5-year-old exploring the world. Even Sophia was smarter than her. Sophia smiled happily and ran to Edith, saying, "It really is like a ghost." She quickly ran up to her aunt and started talking to her with a smile on her face. When Edith realized that her little niece was talking every day, she listened. "Aunt, no one has asked you how you are feeling, so I'll ask you, Aunt, are you okay?" Edith was silent for a while, looking at the cute blue-eyed girl with 2 bows in her hair, and she said, "No, I'm not okay." Her voice sounded so tired, and Edith felt so sorry for her that she couldn't put into words how carefully she was treated at the estate. The sunlight reflected different figures around the office and illuminated the room. Sitting at the table, Edith raised her hand with a brush and began to write something. It was a letter to the Marquis. She wrote his name and surname, and then started thinking. When she formulated the sentence, she said, Please approve my decision to resign for personal reasons. Sincerely, Edith Argyle, Finance Director. The Marquis knew everything, so there was no need to write down all the explanations for him. She wondered for a second if it was too obvious that she was leaving her job, but then realized that she wanted to. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice coming from the corridor, somewhere very far away, but getting closer and closer with each passing second. Someone shouted, "Edith Argyle, are you there?" After that, the girl's heart went to her heels. She felt her hands sweating and her heart beating furiously. It was the Marquis, chased by 2 assistants, but he paid no attention to them. They were already very close. She would not have been able to escape. Suddenly, one of the servants said, "If you wait in the living room, I will bring you the lady myself." The Marquis had caught the servant in a lie, and a few seconds ago, no one knew where she was, and now everyone was ready to bring her in as long as the Marquis did not come in. The man did not want to waste time on this. He quickly opened the door and entered the first room. The servant shouted, "Excuse me, but this is the office of the Viscount." But this did not stop the Marquis. For some reason, he thought that this room had what he needed, or if he was being persuaded to leave, then it was definitely what he was looking for, namely Edith. The girl was sitting under the table, trying not to even breathe so that she wouldn't be heard. She barely managed to hide, and she was very worried that she would not be found, because this situation would have made the Marquis very angry. Suddenly, the girl heard the Marquis walking straight toward her. Was she discovered? This aristocrat was too smart. It was very cramped under the table, and Edith could not even bend her back a little, which was already stiff from sitting all the time. Realizing that the Marquis was going to pull her out from under the table and force her to go to the carriage, she decided to get up, because she had already been discovered. Edith quickly climbed out from under the table and stood up. The Marquis stared at her in surprise and tried to figure out what was going on for a few seconds. And then he said loudly, "Edith, have you been there all along?" At that moment, she realized that she had made a stupid mistake when she decided to get out from under the table. After all, the aristocrat didn't even notice her, but he was already planning to leave, and everything could have turned out differently. Edith slowly stepped toward the exit, trying to slip out of the room quietly. However, the Marquis grabbed her, blocking the exit from the room, which made the situation even more uncomfortable and ridiculous. Touching her hand, Edith remembered the evening when the Marquis had hovered over her and tried to soothe her pain. This caused great disgust and shame inside the girl, so she said through her teeth, "Let me go." But the Marquis didn't even plan to. He was sure that Edith would run away again, so he continued to hold her hand. Edith said, "You know perfectly well why I did it, your lordship. Did I need any more explanations?" When that day happened, not understanding what the problem was, the Marquis tried to resolve the situation, but it was all in vain. He said, "You ran away without saying a word. I didn't know where you were or where to look for you. You ran away for such a long way. That's why I came personally, because I didn't know the reason. Or would you like a servant to come instead of me and load you into the carriage without asking questions?" Edith stood silently, cursing that day. She had decided to go along with this scam. It had brought so many problems and hassles that it was easier to just quit. The Marquis said, "Edith Argyle left her job. Such actions are not typical of you." The girl felt the blood pulsating through her veins. She was so angry. She said, "Then what do you think is characteristic of me? Please forgive me for making you come all this way, because I am so proud of you. I didn't know you would decide to come for me personally. And by the way, it's very timely, because I have prepared something for you." She went to the table and abruptly pulled off the letter, handing it to the Marquis. With the most selfish voice possible, she said, "I was going to send my man to the estate anyway, but if the recipient showed up on his own, it would be a sin not to hand him the parcel that was intended for him." The man looked at the letter for a few seconds without realizing what it was, and then read it. His expression was changing with each passing second, as if he was reading something so painful that it was upsetting him. However, that face was a mistake. Suddenly he laughed, as easily and naturally as if asking for his resignation and dismissal was something extremely funny. He said, "This is even ridiculous. I forbid it. I tell you, no, let's go back to the estate." This made Edith very angry. The letter said in black and white that she was quitting. What right did he have to keep her at work? Edith screamed, "You won't dare take me by force! I won't even leave this office with you!" There was an awkward moment of silence between them, which turned into a certain set of emotions. Suddenly, the Marquis said, "Are you serious now? Did you really want to quit your job as a financier?" This calmness was not characteristic of him. Had he resigned himself to losing one of his workers? It was not such a big problem for him to find another girl who would be ready to carry out the Marquis's orders and instructions. He was a respectable man. There was a line for this job, and Edith calmly answered that yes, she wanted to quit. The Marquis simply said, "I see." Edith looks at him in shock, as if she had seen a ghost in real life. Did he really need nothing more, and he is not going to return the girl to work? It seems that the story ends there, because the Marquis is not the type to be persuaded. Suddenly, the man picked her up and threw her behind his back, carrying her to the exit. The smile on his face did not fade. It only grew, as if his lordship enjoyed doing so. He quickly headed for the exit and held the girl's back, saying, "If you are no longer my financier, then I will not treat you as one either." When Lady Argyle entered the chambers, she saw the maid saying anxiously, "Welcome back, Lady Argyle. I was so frightened that you ran away without saying anything." The Marquis was frightened too. Edith interrupted the maid, hinting that she was not in the mood for conversation. Barely standing on her feet, feeling her body gradually weakening, the maid had prepared everything and said that if anything was needed, Edith could always call her. However, the girl said, "I think you misunderstood me. I would like to leave this estate." The maid angrily replied that she couldn't, because she had been ordered not to let Edith out of the room, and later, she just ran to the exit and fled the room as if she hadn't been there. Edith looked around the room, but she didn't recognize the place. She didn't know where she was, so it scared her a little. They told us to just rest, but left us as if we were in a prison, under house arrest. Everyone is running away from the answer, silent and unwilling to talk, and the Marquis's own act seems to say, "Not a step further." Edith was getting more and more exhausted. She had suffered a lot over the years. She didn't want to take it anymore. It was too much. Looking at the painting, Edith suddenly realized that the room she was in was the room of her ladyship, the Marquis's mother, whose mother had died early, a great tragedy for the estate. This room has been occupied by the wives of the Marquis for generations, so it is always clean and tidy, even if no one lives in this room. Unfortunately, it has been empty for 20 years. It was no wonder that shivers ran down my spine when I realized where Edith was, but because of her running shoes, she felt stolen, and then the Marquis left very quickly because of some urgent business. She was very tired, and Edith was sure that the Marquis would not finish his business before she fell asleep, so she decided to give in to the urge to sleep. Slowly closing her eyes, she lay down on the small sofa next to the bed. She fell asleep on that couch in her clothes, until the night was over. It was already very dark outside, but the lights were still on in the mansion, which was not surprising, because the Marquis did not seem to be going to bed yet. Footsteps could be heard slowly along the corridor, bending the old floor of the mansion. It was the Marquis, and he asked a servant how Argyle was doing, to which he received the answer, "She hasn't called anyone since she let the maid go." The man nodded in response and approached Lady Argyle's door. He knocked lightly on the door and said, "Edith, it's me." But there was only silence behind the door. Absolutely nothing was heard, as if no one was in the room. After knocking again, the Marquis said, "Edith, let's just talk." However, in response, he again received silence, which chastised his soul even more and more. He thought that Edith had run away, so he quickly pulled the handle and went into the room. He opened the door loudly and started to get angry. After all, he did not see Edith on the bed, who was supposed to be there, or the servants did not follow up, and the financier ran away again. The bed was not crumpled. No one had definitely lain on this bed, and the Marquis began to get even angrier, realizing that he had lost Edith again. But suddenly, his eyes were drawn to a couch at the end of the room. He slowly walked over to her and looked at her. Edith was lying on a small sofa, which was intended for his wife's rest, but not for sleeping. The Marquis tried to understand why Edith fell asleep on this sofa and not on the bed. His eyes immediately softened and a smile appeared on his face. He mentally said, "Edith Argyle, the one who makes my life stable and the one who makes me act rashly from time to time." Suddenly, he heard a slight groan, and Edith woke up to a loud bang of the door. Her eyes widened, and her drowsiness was lifted as she saw the Marquis. Rising up, she said, "Your Excellency." The Marquis exhaled and asked, smiling, "Why are you sleeping here and not in the bed?" Edith replied that she could not sleep in this bed, because this room and everything in it was meant for the Marquis's fiancé, so she could not stay here. This was his mother's room. The Marquis said, "With my permission, you can gallop around here. Why not? If you are not satisfied with something, you can change it. You can redecorate this room in any style." Edith stared in shock at the man standing in front of her, unable to believe what she was just hearing. She quietly said, "That's a lot of money. So wait, should I redo it?" The Marquis replied that nothing would change if the girl lived in this room, but Edith objected, reminding the Marquis that she was quite happy with the room she had lived in all along. The Marquis replied, "I ordered it cleaned. No one else lives there. You quit your job as a financier, didn't you? But you didn't say a word about the role of the bride." The girl's jaw dropped when she realized that the Marquis was offering to stay in this room, a room that had been occupied only by brides and mothers of the Marquis family for years. These were her new quarters. "But Lady Galloway has left, hasn't she? What's all this for? I will not continue to play the part of your bride. I can no longer feel comfortable here, and you know the reason why." The Marquis just sighed softly and then smiled slightly. The next second he said, "Termination of the contract must be agreed upon by both parties, remember?" He was silent for a few seconds, making Edith nervous. And then he said, "As for your discomfort, wasn't that medical care?" Edith screamed loudly, emphasizing that she was not ready to listen to this. She did not agree to this. The Marquis replied, "No one knows that I was actually drunk, but there are already rumors around the estate that we slept together. If that's the case, wouldn't it be better if we didn't break our contract?" Edith just sighed softly and said that what had happened could not be changed. The Marquis shouted, "Then we can pretend that nothing is wrong. First of all, I will try to fix the situation. I will help with everything necessary." But the Marquis did not understand the main thing. Edith did not want this. All this was now useless. Edith said, "I don't need such pity. It would be best to cancel our ceremony right now. And in general, I should be the one to ask if I disgust you so much. It's you who dislike me." The Marquis froze in place, not realizing the seriousness of Argyle's words. The girl continued, "If that's not the case, then why did you just leave that day? Unlike me, you were in your right mind then. Now these words about medical care? I'm shocked. Enough is enough. Find a girl you really want to share a bedroom with and marry her." These words came screaming out of her recently sleepy throat. She was so tired of all this fuss that sometimes she just wanted to forget about it all and live the life of her dreams. She wanted to be happy with someone who really appreciated you. Suddenly, the Marquis said, "Edith, do you think I would ask a girl I have no feelings or attraction for to marry me? Then what's the point? I feel more than just gratitude for your work, Edith, much more. This is not something that can be explained in words. Only time and action could verify this. Only a sincere confession to himself could give him a chance to understand how the Marquis really felt about Edith." He slowly approached the girl and took her chin. She could feel his manly and firm hand lightly tracing the contours of her face, like a mitten. He leaned in so close that the distance frightened Edith, and she tried to move away, but something seemed to hold her back. She looked at the Marquis in shock, realizing that this night would not pass without a trace. In her mind, they were just a person who gave her a job, and she did it. She leaned her arm against the small sofa, which was still warm after Edith had gotten off it. The Marquis said quietly, "Where are you going?" The smile on his face was mesmerizing, as if it made you submit to him. She fell on the bed, and the Marquis said, "You're very forgetful, did you know?" The girl did not understand what we were talking about, but it seems that somewhere deep inside, she was aware of and picked up on the hints. Edith wrinkled her face at her fantasies, which only made the Marquis laugh. Suddenly, the Marquis remembered that day that left an imprint on Edith's fate forever. She saw the Marquis holding back, as if he was afraid of doing something wrong. He said very quietly, "Come on, let's do it one step at a time, shall we?" The girl looked at him in surprise, trying to understand what he was talking about. When she felt a squeezing touch on her wrist, she instinctively turned her head. The Marquis quickly and skillfully bound Edith's hands above her head, restricting her ability to move. The Marquis said, "That misunderstanding that day was probably due to the lack of a habitual order. I want to check if I feel this way about you. If we both really want this, today everything will be as it should be." The man hovered over her, looking her straight in the eye. His breath enveloped her skin, and she felt the dull smell of menthol pass through her nose, forcing her to inhale more air. The kiss did not allow her to speak. She only gave in to her involuntary feelings. When she realized that the Marquis was her boss, she almost went crazy and turned away with a scrunched-up face. A few seconds later, her outer clothing was removed. The coolness that enveloped her body was both pleasant and disturbing, a feeling she had never known before. The Marquis said, "If you want to ask for something, speak now." He looked into her eyes, as if to say that any thought of Edith was driving him crazy. His desire to be with her was frightening, because their relationship had never gone this far. The Marquis continued, "A little later, you will understand my words if I say something wrong or you don't like it. You have a way to stop everything. Just slap me, do it, and I will stop immediately." Edith sat on the couch in surprise, still staring ahead with round eyes. For some reason, the look that so openly wanted her no longer frightened her. The Marquis said, "Edith Argyle, the best defense is offense. Now you know where to hit. Do you need more time to think?" With each passing minute, she felt her head gradually shutting down. The Marquise continued, "That's right, a financier can't do that, but what about your daughter-in-law? Now you only have that status." There was a moment between them that remained in both of their memories for a long time. The man said, "If you decided to play the silent game, it was a bad idea." After a few seconds, Edith realized that it must have been a mistake. She shouted, "Marquis, stop, please!" But the eyes she opened with surprise and incomprehension at the same time only fueled the man's interest. The Marquis said, "If you want to finish, you always know you can hit me." Edith felt a sharp pain that pierced her entire body, as if her limbs were numb. The next second, she was lying in the arms of the Marquis. He gently stroked her back. It was so easy and calm that it seemed as if they had been married all their lives. That day, he thought he was going crazy, but there was nothing he could do to help in such a situation. Edith's consciousness was so blurred that she didn't even notice him. The effect of this drug seemed to be very strong, and yet, it was the right decision, because at the time, it was the only thing he could do to ease her suffering. This time, she was in her right mind, so the experience would be completely different. Fever gripped her body. Her hands and feet were so hot that she felt as if she was going to burn. With each passing minute, this heat only increased. Edith looked at the Marquis, who seemed to be paying attention. His gaze reminded me of the same indifferent man who was mean to everyone, but was extremely neat and sweet with her. His naked body was so magnificent that even when she was completely tired, Edith could not take her eyes off him. The light in the room was bright and kept them awake, but that was not their main concern. Clothes were lying on the floor, in a storm of emotions, scattered wherever they could. When the Marquis stood up, Edith almost went crazy when she saw his body, strong as steel, and his muscles. "I was so tired, his voice seemed so inviting, and his smell so familiar that I was beginning to like it." Edith could not have imagined that she would experience such a list of emotions in one night. It was so crazy. Every drop of pain in her body was worth this closeness with the Marquis. The man held his gaze on her, watching her. He gently took her hand, and it sent Edith back for a couple of minutes, where she squeezed his hand and felt his breath on her skin. The Marquis leaned on his fists and began to say something, but his voice only echoed in my head. Their eyes met again, only this time it wasn't a second blink. It was a long eye contact. After that, their passion swallowed them up like a pit, into which you can fall very easily and almost impossible to climb out. The crackling of the fireplace in the background added to the romantic atmosphere in the room. The man tickled her, making Edith laugh softly. When the Marquis rose, he covered his mouth with his hands. His burning cheeks betrayed his fatigue. He leaned over to Edith and touched her forehead. A light man's hand ran over a patch of skin that was covered by a fringe. Edith tried to take a breath, but her body ached and hurt. The Marquis said quietly, "I'm sorry if I hurt you." Their eyes met again. The world ceased to exist for the two of them. After all that, the feeling was completely different. Edith knew what she was feeling, but she couldn't admit it to herself. Each time it meant something more than just a glance. It was more than a boss and a subject, more than going to his office for help, more than being in the room as his bride. Tears appeared on her face, but they seemed to be tears of joy. Chloe felt her hand tighten and clutch the bed. Another tear fell from her face, and she wrinkled it, trying to dull the pain. The Marquis's eyes shone so brightly as they looked at her. They reminded her of only one feeling. Edith kept secret that she had wanted him for a long time, loved him for a long time. She dreamed of the Marquis, but gave up because it was love. When they were standing in the street together the next day, Edith suddenly said, "Let's talk about that day," an expression that already meant a clear date, time, and place. The Marquis looked at the girl suspiciously, trying to figure out what else she wanted to hear. But he decided to tell her the story that turned his life around, about the girl who made his heart beat faster every day. The first time they met, the Marquis did not take this girl seriously. The court counsel then said, "Viscount Argyle's younger sister is applying for the position of financier. What do you think?" That day, the Marquis was delighted to see a new candidate for the position. The finance department was short-handed, so Edith applied for the job just in time. He planned to hire her as an intern and see what she could do, because it was risky to hire just anyone for such an important position. But a very young girl came in. She didn't look like someone who would be dealing with finances and digging through these documents. Edith was 19 years old, and in his defense, the Marquis said, "I was only 20 at the time, a year older than you, so it was no surprise to omit such a point as age." The Marquis offered to return to Edith in a few years when she was too old for the job, but she did not want to, and began to promote her candidacy vigorously. And then Edith began to list all the reasons why she shouldn't have been fired. The amount of labor was too small compared to what was needed. The financiers were too overworked. At this rate, they will leave this world before the workplace. The Marquis thought this girl was strange in every sense of the word. She talked a lot, and it was sometimes annoying, but she never lied, so the Marquis said, "Do what you want." He was exhausted from all the years of working on this estate and giving orders, but he was impressed by the courage of this stranger to challenge him and speak her mind. One day, as usual, he handed her papers with documents. Edith Argyle replied, "I will not disappoint you." But the Marquis did not hear this phrase at all. Edith charmed him, despite the fact that he had no idea of any relationship with her. He froze in place, trying to regain consciousness in order to hand over the letter. But a slight shaking went through my body, accompanied by anxiety, and my heart was pounding so hard that it seemed as if Edith could hear it too. In fact, it was the first time in his life that he was confused. This behavior was not typical for him, but he simply did not understand how to behave. He felt as if he had spent his whole life in the desert, and then suddenly found himself in a beautiful garden. Catching the moment when the flowers were blooming, he fell in love with the energy that this girl radiated. However, he felt this way only once, so he didn't know what would happen next. Therefore, in trying to find the right word to describe his feelings, he made many mistakes. Moreover, unconsciously, one day Edith asked, "Your lordship, you are not married?" To which he replied, "I'm not going to be," as if to cut me off. Having made it clear that he did not want a relationship, Edith was a little confused. But then she asked, "How are you going to solve the problems of inheriting the title?" To which the Marquis said that his younger brother was still alive, even though he was on the run. The Marquis could have brought this guy back at any time, from the very first moment until he escaped, and he is being kept informed of where he is and what he is doing. In order to bring his brother back, he had to snap his fingers, and they would bring him back immediately. Edith smiled. She could feel a strong spirit from the Marquis. However, she realized that he did not feel the same way she did for him. Edith was the first to say that she did not want to get married, but she did not know that the Marquis overheard this, and he sent a servant to ask her if she planned to wear a wedding ring someday, to which she refused. So the Marquis decided to do the same. He gave up this thought the moment he began to hide his hands in white silk gloves. Edith first saw them when she was handed a new folder of documents. She looked at them suspiciously and said, "By the way, why have you suddenly become newsworthy lately?" The Marquis remained silent, his gaze sharp as a knife, and his hands tensed with an uncomfortable question. His excuse was, "I hate touching dirty things and don't argue." In fact, the reason was quite different. He was burning up. His heart was beating faster when Edith touched his hand, even accidentally, so now mittens were part of his life. But he couldn't admit it. He was ashamed to hide his feelings for so many years, as if under a big metal lock. He thought that everything would return to normal over time. But one day, Edith asked, "Why don't you consider Viola Galloway?" It seemed to break the Marquis from the inside. He did not understand why he reacted so strongly to this name, why he did not accept other women. That's why he asked Edith to be his wife, first as a joke, and then he planned to go through with it. He came up with thousands of excuses for Edith to pretend to be his wife. A salary 10 times higher, bonuses and gifts. There were a few discrepancies, but she didn't even pay attention to them. He was not going to go beyond this pathos if Edith did not want to. He didn't even dare to think about what lovers usually do with each other. But did he really want so much that it was forbidden? Everything was completely confused. It was unbearable. It was impossible to think soberly then, but he did not want things to get worse. The Marquis realized that he shouldn't treat Edith like that, but he couldn't help himself. He planned not to tell anyone about it, and to forget about the incident, hoping that Edith did not understand what was happening. All you have to do is wrap the flowers in the packaging, even if the vase has already fallen. It was bright and a little hot that day, the same day that their night turned into something more than allowed. The Marquis said, "Will she understand that I fell ill the day after that because I tried so hard to restrain myself in front of her?" His head was falling apart with similar thoughts. He knew that after that, Edith would run away so far that it would be difficult to find her. The Marquis smiled and said quietly, "He always says things that piss me off." He slowly left the room and saw the maid. After ordering to prepare a bath and leaving the women's clothes in the next room, he left. He looked at Edith again and smiled. She was so charming that it was hard to think of anything else but her. The Marquis said, "Edith, my dear Edith, I hope you will now realize how wonderful a creature you are to me." It was as hot outside as on any day of the summer. Edith slept on a bed so soft and wide that it seemed as if she could have stayed there all her life. She woke up to the bright sun shining on her. My body was aching and aching, as if I would never be able to get up again. Suddenly, moments of what she had done yesterday flashed through her memory. With a sharp change in her face and a grimace, she stood up. Her body ached so badly that Edith said, "My body, it feels like I've been beaten." Looking at herself, she noticed some strange clothes. She had never had such pajamas, and she did not understand where they came from. It was the first time in her life that Edith had ever seen this thing, and she also felt as if she had been washed before putting on these pajamas. Remembering what had happened to the Marquis yesterday, Edith wrinkled her face again and covered her face with her hands. Suddenly, she heard someone calling her. It was the maid, she asked happily. "Did you sleep well on this bed? Let me help you get dressed and ready." Edith smiled and approached the girl. Some time passed, and the room was still bright. Argyle was sitting at the makeup table, watching the maid swipe a brush across her face, smearing different textures. She didn't think she would even get help with her makeup, which was very refreshing. Suddenly, the maid shouted, "Lady Argyle, this brush is so beautiful." Turning to the makeup table, Argyle noticed a lot of new combs and hair jewelry. These jewelry pieces did not look cheap at all. On the contrary, they cost a fortune. The maid said, "This ribbon is so beautiful. I've never touched silk like this. This embroidery is wonderful, but I thought it was just a floral pattern. But they are all different. There is a deer here and a deer there." The maid asked if she could do Edith's hair, folding her arms and looking at her with puppy dog eyes. Edith allowed it, and the maid quickly ran to the girl to braid her hair in a beautiful way. She was crazy about these ribbons. High-ranking aristocrats no longer have many luxury items, such as expensive vases in their rooms, or very expensive little things like pendants or hairbrushes. Perhaps the costs were minimal, since no one needed such trinkets, but because of this, many believed that the Rodion family would soon disappear. At least the main reason was the Marquis's future wife, or rather the lack of her. His lordship's mother had already died, and Griselda was the only lady of her family left. When she became queen, she did not pass on her title to anyone. That's why the maids, who dreamed of seeing the life of a rich lady, were bored here, not at all happy. When the maid finished braiding the ribbons and fixing the hair, she looked at Edith and asked her enthusiastically, "What do you think?" Edith felt great. It was so refreshing. All the little things were perfect, absolutely everything. Her hair was braided in a beautiful hairstyle. Her body smelled like a wonderful perfume. Her hands were moisturized. Her makeup was made up with expensive cosmetics. All of this made Edith look incredible. Suddenly, the Marquis entered the room, glanced at Edith and smiled. He ordered the maid to leave, and he slowly approached the girl, looking into her eyes. The door slammed loudly as his maid left the room. The quiet footsteps that echoed around the room were so familiar. During her time with the Marquis, Edith could definitely distinguish his walk from any other. It was impressive. He walked over to the mirror and gently looked at the girl sitting there, in whose reflection he saw his bride. His hands were still wearing the white and silk mittens that Argyle had become so accustomed to. The Marquis leaned over and kissed the girl's hand, showing his respect. Oh God, those green eyes seemed to fog her mind, and Edith thought she couldn't stand being around him any longer. However, she was surprised by this gesture. She abruptly took his hand away, but did not understand why he did it. The Marquis replied, "We'll have to work on the appeal as well." The girl didn't understand anything at all. The Marquis suddenly smiled, but not so easily. He actually lifted the corners of his lips, showing his smile. Looking at Edith, he said again, "From now on, please call me by my first name, okay? You are my fiancée, Edith, so I would like to take away these formalities." He was still holding her hand after the kiss, but she yanked it away again, this time taking it for sure and pressing it to her body. She asked in frustration, "Why do I have to do this? Please leave me in this status. Our contract is no longer valid." The Marquis bulged his eyes in surprise, expecting an explanation for the girl's harsh remarks. Edith said, "Our relationship has completely changed. I signed a contract with you when I worked for you and was your financier, but I no longer hold that position, so the contract is automatically canceled, as is my position." I could tell by her face that this phrase was not easy for her, that it was easy to pretend that she did not care at all, but that she had to get it over with. It was too dangerous. The Marquis sighed softly, realizing that he did not want to lose the one who had been his inspiration all his life. Edith said, "That's right. A piece of my heart hasn't belonged to me for a long time, so I should end it before he realizes what happened." before I get hurt." Edith looked at the Marquis and asked him to let her go. It was the only thing she wanted. There could be no love without desire, and violence only created fear and disgust. Edith said that there was nothing between them, no feelings, no desire, just an order that created even more problems. He kept her here on purpose, forbade her to leave. It was all done to keep her with him. The Marquis was struck to the core by this. He really felt the bones that protected his heart just start to break. It was so painful. The pain was much stronger and deeper than physical. It was moral exhaustion. The Marquis said, "But we spent the night together. It can leave an imprint on the rest of our lives, so I have to repay you." The girl sighed. She didn't want it. She just didn't want it. Edith replied, "No need. I don't want you to be responsible for yesterday. I never even wanted to get married. So if you are going to pay me for this guilt somehow, don't you dare, otherwise I will consider it an insult." With every second, the pain was growing so fast that it seemed as if the Marquis was going to fall over and never wake up again if he heard this phrase. He looked up and saw Edith's gentle smile, and it enchanted him again, just like that day, just like the first day they met. She was incredible. The Marquis asked, "If I rehire you as a financier, will you continue to honor the contract, or do you just want to work for me?" It was a pity that the man did not even understand the problem. Edith just wanted to end it all. His manner was a bit over the top. No amount of persuasion worked, because the decision was unchangeable. It's strange. The Marquis isn't angry. He's not irritated. It's hard to look him straight in the eye. What are his thoughts? There was an awkward moment of silence between them, neither of them saying anything, as if waiting for an answer or a compliment from the other. Edith thought to herself, "What a stuffy one. Say something already. At this rate, I'll forget what the conversation was about. How long will this go on?" For the first time in his life, the Marquis's face was filled with disappointment, as if he had been given up on right there. Edith Argyle didn't understand what was wrong with him. He was silent, didn't say anything, as if he was getting on her nerves. No matter how hard Edith tried, he would look into her eyes in disappointment. Suddenly, a red-haired knight ran into the room and shouted his lordship's name. When the Marquis did turn his head and say something, Edith's heart was relieved. The Marquis said, "A letter? From whom? Although it does not matter, I see that the head of the knights is not very busy at such a time as this, since he personally decided to report such a trifle to me." The knight opened his eyes in surprise, and then he said, "This letter is from the Queen." The man's face turned white at this phrase. When the Marquis was handed this scroll, he slowly began to unfold it, peering curiously inside. The neatly rolled scroll smelled lightly of perfume, or was it just the smell associated with the Queen? The letter said, "Dear Marquis Rodion, I heard about your marriage, probably because of the problems and disorder in the capital. You did not bother your aunt and tell her the details, but as a member of the Rodion family, I do not dream of just turning a blind eye to it." The Marquis peered at each sentence, running his eyes over the letters and then the phrases. He continued to read, "And if the throne is finally occupied, and all is well and quiet in the capital, I would like to visit you as soon as possible and talk about marriage. Do not prepare for my arrival. Just wait. With love, Griselda Helen Rodion Dunkeled." For some reason, this scroll caused mixed feelings in the Marquis. The Marquis suddenly frowned. Looking ahead, he said, "I can't believe she decided to come in person. It seems like a decision that was definitely part of Viola Galloway and the Duke's plan." For some reason, all this running around with guests was very stressful for the Marquis. Either Viola or Auntie, they all come so suddenly that you never know how much time you have to live. The Dowager Queen's daughter, Princess Regina, has taken the throne, but the Galloway family cannot be destroyed. That is why the two families decided to negotiate, which resulted in a marriage between the Duke and the Marquis. But what did the Marquis do? He broke off his engagement to Viola Galloway because her family had asked for it. Suddenly, he saw that his coffee glass had tipped over onto the tablecloth. The Marquis continued to think. So, instead of letting go and accepting the fact that the Marquis would not marry their daughter, the Duke decided to use Griselda to put pressure on the Marquis. Calling Edith, the man told her everything he knew, and Argyle dutifully agreed to help him in his family's difficult times. The Marquis said, "It will be difficult to negotiate with the former ruler," but Edith was ready for it, so she was not as nervous as she was during her first meeting with Viola. The Marquis said that Edith would be surprised, but the girl was sure that there would be no one worse than his lordship, and the man appreciated the joke. In general, the Marquis clearly understood that Edith was ready to negotiate with his aunt. Tomorrow there will be a lot of things to do, so her husband asked her to go to bed earlier than usual. Edith replied, "Okay, don't worry." The next day, she stood watching the parade that greeted the queen. Edith knew that she should prepare, but she did not expect it to be so large-scale. Edith said, "Wow, I wonder how much it all costs." Suddenly, the stranger cleared her throat. Edith immediately realized that it was the queen. She was dressed in an expensive dress, with a black silk cape, a beret on her head, a unique collection, and the brooch hanging on the cape looked wonderful. Edith leaned over and greeted the queen, saying, "It is an honor to meet you, your majesty." Argyle saw a smile appear on the queen's face. The queen asked, "I am also glad to meet Lady Argyle. What is your name?" Edith slowed down a bit, because she was still a little shocked by the meeting with the queen herself. But later, she said, "Edith." The queen praised this name. She associated it with bravery, because the name itself translates as "she who is in control of the battle." That is, she controls the situation. The Marquis looked quite calm. His internal control was admirable, and he tried to react calmly to the situation before him. The queen said, "Alfios and Edith, your names go well together." Argyle smiled. She knew that everything was under control now, so she could relax because she had impressed the queen. Of course, she was nervous, and it was quite noticeable, but she tried her best to make jokes to cover her nerves. She realized that the queen's provocations began when she jokingly began comparing their names. Edith didn't even want to marry him, but secretly, she was already being wooed and imagined with a white veil near arches of flowers. Sitting at the same table, the queen asked, "I hope you don't feel uncomfortable." She looked at Edith curiously, as if she wanted to add something else if the answer was no. But the girl replied, "Not at all, your majesty." The queen said she wanted to speak to Edith alone because she felt somewhat uncomfortable with him, realizing that he and his bride-to-be were both frightened of the wedding and their needs. Their relationship was quite open, in the sense that many people already knew about it. Edith Argyle and the Marquis were now officially listed as a couple at all events, but no one knew that it was all just a stage to protect the Marquis from marrying Viola Galloway. The queen said, "Actually, this news is not new to you. I think you have already guessed it, haven't you?" Edith didn't understand what the woman meant. She raised her head with such a smug face, along with her cup of tea, that it seemed as if she had a plan so brilliant that it was not even subject to destruction. The queen continued, "Alfion is now with Irene, or rather Lady Russell." Edith froze in her tracks, her eyes bulging in shock as she tried to digest the information she had just heard. A barely familiar image of a girl flashed through my mind. She was blonde and had amber eyes. The queen said, "I think you should be introduced to each other. I have brought a few maids with me. I feel uncomfortable without them." The first queen to be introduced was Barely Spencer, who looked like a painfully cute girl, with pink hair and a bayonet at her temple, and a kingdom brooch adding to her solidity. The next one was Lady Russell. Just like in the image, she was blonde with amber eyes. A knitted hat on her head added an elegant and delicate look. The last one was Lady Doric, who had a green aura, neatly tailored clothes, and hair in a ponytail that perfectly matched each other. When she opened her eyes, Edith saw extraordinary purple eyes. They were so bright and beautiful that she stared into them, which was considered bad form. Staring at anyone generally causes discomfort. Edith thought to herself, she calls them maids, but it's obvious that they are candidates for the role of the Marquis's daughter-in-law. They have perfectly matched clothes that look harmonious with the rest of the accessories, a marriage age that was the perfect middle, and a pleasant appearance, and even the pedigree couldn't have been a factor. Russell and Spencer, the Earl families, are directly subordinate to the Queen, so it is not surprising that she decided to present them as maids. And Edith had never heard of the Doric family, which must be much more prestigious and respected than the Argyle family. The Marquis was definitely not in the best of moods right now. Because other people were now trying to ruin his marriage, Edith remembered this expression on his face that always made her laugh. Edith felt sorry for the Marquis, because if in ordinary families you could ignore relatives, you couldn't do that here. She was also the Queen, so it was unlikely to work. Lady Russell was also infinitely sorry. The Marquis was too cold to talk to young ladies. Edith hoped he wouldn't snap. When the Queen said that the maids had come, Edith replied indifferently, so the Queen asked again, "Do you not care?" Edith didn't understand what she meant. The Queen remarked that the Marquis was with another woman. Did his fiancée really not care? The girl suddenly realized that she had to show at least an image of jealousy. But she said, "Not really, it's just the will of your majesty, so I can't contradict it?" The Queen smiled and asked if Edith wasn't nervous just because it was her order, but that's not what Argyle meant at all. The woman said, "It's okay, you're braver than I thought. You're Alfios' fiancée anyway." Suddenly, Edith saw the same innocent and fluffy Spencer, but now she looked like a menacing monster who was ready to tear Edith to pieces if she received an order to do so, and she became alert and prepared for the next provocation. The Queen said, "It's not your fault. Such courage is not a sin. I know you didn't mean to offend me. I take it as a compliment. I like strong and courageous people, don't you, Catherine?" The woman raised her head and addressed the stranger with a green aura, whose family was rather obscure. She replied, "Yes, Your Majesty, it is as you said." Her violet eyes shone brighter than diamonds in the sun. It was a fascinating sight to behold. From time to time, she would cast cautious glances at Edith, and this could not help but give her strange thoughts. This girl was not as simple as she seemed, and from time to time, these unnoticeable and small hints made Edith wonder what was going on here. The Queen put her cup on the table and said, "You're wonderful, Edith. Now I look at you from a different perspective. I think it will be fun. We'll spend a lot of time with each other." The woman smiled, but that look and smile felt like she had just been locked in a cage called marriage from which she would not be able to escape. Lady Doverin replied, "My God, the Queen so rarely speaks that it sounds like Lady Argyle. You are so lucky." Edith wondered if she would ever be able to leave this cursed family, to leave the damn Rodion family, and she was haunted by the feeling that she would eventually become a prisoner in the bonds of the Rodion family. Night continued to fall outside. Edith stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily. Her corset was very tight from time to time, and the tea party was very intense. This woman was quite intrusive and asked a lot of questions, so Edith wanted to get away from there as soon as possible, so that she wouldn't have to listen to any more advice about how to live and what the Queen's wealth was. However, it didn't go so badly. They talked a lot about the economy, so the conversations were quite interesting from time to time, and Edith liked to talk about topics where she could answer something. Only one moment in the work really confused her. The Queen suddenly started talking about the Silver Grove Hunting Festival. She said, "Have you ever heard of the Silver Grove Hunting Festival? Have you ever seen the silver fox Rodion?" Edith looked at the Queen in surprise. Later, she said, "I heard that this species was first discovered more than 20 years ago, but I never had a chance to see it in person, so I only heard about it in stories." The Queen slowly placed the mug of tea on the table, occasionally touching the pattern on it. In the tea she had been drinking for so long, you could still see the reflection of the Queen. The woman said, "This silver fox seems so beautiful and fragile, but it is a very dangerous predator. Rodion made this animal a symbol of sorts so that others would never forget how dangerous it is. It is very fierce, but at the same time smart, so it is definitely hiding somewhere. Well, it's good that it is not in sight." Edith slowly picked up and drank a mug of tea, and then said that the Queen's stories were real enough. The Queen said that every year people try to catch this fox, but no one has succeeded yet, so the cash prize increases every year, and she also noted that she would like to bring her best hunters from the capital. Edith Argyle said, "Your Majesty, shouldn't the person who can catch this fox be from the Silver Grove?" For a few minutes, the woman thought about it. She stopped smiling, as if she was really immersed in this question, looking for an answer somewhere in the archives of her memory. The Queen said, "Yes, that's right. You're right. I know about it too." She raised her head and looked at Edith with respect, as if she had begun to perceive the girl as her equal without any hidden meaning or suspicious look. According to the rules, the silver fox was supposed to be caught by a person who lived in a silver grove. Everyone else was forbidden to use weapons for hunting. The Queen said, "Everyone said so." Her tone was so quiet that it seemed as if she was only moving her lips, discussing her thoughts aloud. After that, she was silent for quite a while, and Edith began to wonder if she had said everything right, if she had given the Queen something to eat. A popular facial expression that signified pride in oneself and one's family, wasn't it passed down from generation to generation in this family? But you can't ask the Queen that directly. When Argyle entered her room, she saw a black silhouette sitting on her bed. She quickly recognized the Marquis by his head, but he scared the girl with his quiet and low voice. Edith asked, "What are you doing here? Still no light?" But the Marquis just rolled his eyes. The Marquis quietly replied that he was only waiting for the owner of the room, but despite her fear, Edith decided to ask further if the Marquis was going to greet his aunt the Queen. The Marquis replied, "I am the owner of the Stribnog Grove, and she is a guest, and guests should not stay long in my estate, and you have not yet given a final answer." Edith replied that no matter how much the Marquis tried to convince her, her answer would remain the same, because she had priorities and principles that she was not going to give up in the name of marriage to a man she had repressed feelings for several years ago. Edith was not in the mood for marriage, she said so clearly, and she would like to stop hearing such ridiculous questions. The Marquis bowed his head, trying to accept the fact that the woman who had kept his entire life under control, counted his money, and did a huge amount of work for his benefit, could leave at any time because he had fired her, and the only reason she was still in this estate was because she wanted to help the Marquis. They shared a look. It was too long and uncomfortable. The Marquis said, "But we are." And then Edith shouted, "That doesn't oblige us to get married." The Marquis's hair flowed over his head like a light fabric that had been left to develop in the wind. Suddenly the man said, "You make me horny," and Edith's body shivered. They were vile raves that she wished she could never hear again. She felt tremendous shame for the night she drank something laced with Viola Galloway, and the night they were both completely alone, just couldn't get out of her memory, couldn't leave Edith alone. The girl cried out, "Oh my God, your lordship!" The Marquis suddenly asked what he needed to do to get Edith to agree to marry him, but the girl did not fully understand the benefits of this. Did he just love her, or did he need something? Moreover, the man himself had always said that he was not interested in marriage, not interested in anything related to family, women. Edith asked, "If all this is not true, then what did you say? I mean, when it comes to marriage, you always said the same thing." Fragments of the Marquis's phrases from the last few years flew through my mind. My husband always said, "Why should I pay attention to these women? It disgusts me. I shouldn't bring it up anymore." The Marquis replied that he had never avoided marriage. These words were only about marriage on the account that was beneficial for the sake of the kingdom. He always wanted to have a wife who would appreciate him and love him, would always support and appreciate the moments she spent with him. Edith said, "Is there a difference between a marriage of love and a marriage of convenience?" Suddenly he reached out, his warm palms grabbing Edith's hand. He put her hand to his face and said, "There is a difference, because the person who told me about potential daughters-in-law was you." The girl looked up at him in shock, trying to comprehend the information she had just heard. Edith shouted, "Are you saying that you lied to me all the time and answered me that way on purpose?" The Marquis smilingly replied that if someone else had asked him the same question, he would have answered completely differently. The only reason he answered that way was because Edith herself did not want to get married, so he accepted this idea and tried to be closer to her by adopting her interests. His look was charming, his hair was too, but his feelings had long since disappeared. Edith had suppressed them, as well as her desire to be the Marquis's bride. She had done it only out of guilt and a desire to help, but nothing more. Edith continued to stare at him in shock, trying to replay that phrase in her head over and over again, which changed her thoughts into before and after. It was impossible. He spoke so confidently about it. What kind of stupid thoughts? Had she been listening to lies all her life while living under the same roof as the Marquis? Had she deliberately suppressed her feelings because she was sure of the lack of reciprocity, and now she felt guilty for it? Edith said quietly, "You're not trying to tell me you like me, are you?" The smile on his face was driving him crazy, and Argyle held on as best he could, with the last of his strength, to the 3 words she wanted to hear to finally realize the gravity of the situation. The man silently pulled her to him and looked into her eyes, as if expecting her to answer this question. Edith began to feel nervous. Her hands and feet felt cottony. Her head stopped thinking. All she could think of were 3 words. The damned 3 words. "Say them, Marquis. Say them at last." Edith screamed, "If you don't answer, won't that be considered consent? Or will you get angry? You can at least say no." The Marquis put his hand on his forehead and answered no briefly, seemingly serious enough to tell the girl about it. Edith said, "What, no? That word has only one meaning." The girl wanted to run for the exit, because her soul felt a minimal peace. Did he really not like her? Ugh, that would have made her life hundreds or even thousands of times easier. The Marquis said, "I like you," in those 3 words. 3 damn words. Edith felt her world crumble the second she heard the last letter I. Out of anger, she grabbed her husband's hand so tightly that the Marquis opened his eyes in shock at the force. She led him toward the exit as fast as she could. The Marquis quickly realized what he had to do, so after receiving another tug on his wrist, he ran out of the room. Edith quickly slammed the door. Such a massive and huge door in 1 second. No one could do it. Everyone was pulling hard on the handle, but not Edith. Emotions were raging in her body, trying to give one emotion. When she went back to the room, she said, "Impossible." It fell to the ground as fast as the world around it, destroyed. Everything was destroyed. She covered her mouth with her hands. All her life, she had been sure of only one thought, the thought that the Marquis had never liked her. She had given up all hope. Edith did not understand what shocked her more, the fact that she had lived a lie all her life, or the fact that her feelings were mutual. She opened her eyes and screamed, "Impossible! Impossible! It can't be!"